What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the BizDad Podcast. Today, I am very excited to have a good conversation with Ben Glass. This is my first time having the father of one of the people I've interviewed, besides having my own father on, but having the father of somebody I interviewed. So I'm really looking forward to it. And it's funny because you were referred over to me from another interview, Brian Beckham, who I did not know you guys knew each other, and I didn't, there was no connection there at all, but yet I'd already interviewed your son. So really looking forward to having a good conversation with you, Ben. So to get started, if you can, introduce yourself, tell us about yourself, tell us about your family, and tell us about your business.
And then we'll have to go back and see if Brian's stories and my stories match up in any way, because that's always interesting. Yeah. So I'm Ben Glass. I am dad to 9 and now granddad to an additional 9. I'm an attorney by trade and profession, so have been a lawyer for 43 years, been married about 43 years. And so we've got a personal injury and a long-term disability practice here in Northern Virginia. We created a second business about 20 years ago. So we also coach solo and small law firms on how to grow a great business. So we don't create websites, we don't sell digital media, any of that stuff. We help lawyers design a life, design a practice that fits the life that they want to live. And so there's obviously a lot of different flavors to that. And so, I am in practice with my oldest son, who you've interviewed, Brian. So he came over here about 4 or 5 years ago from a different firm. And we have a lot of fun in the two businesses. We've got a great team that supports us.
Welcome to the BizDad Podcast, where we dive into the melding of fathership and entrepreneurship with your host, the original BizDad himself, Adam Labar. Adam is a Christian, a former Air Force officer, a dad to 3 amazing kids, a coach, a real estate investor, and a business owner. On this podcast, he'll explore the unique journeys of amazing dads who are striving for greatness in both business and family. So whether you're a dad who is an aspiring entrepreneur, a seasoned business owner, or simply a man striving to be a better dad, get ready as the BizDad brings you conversations to inspire, challenge, and equip you to be a better dad and entrepreneur. And now, here's Adam.
9 kids. That is a lot. I love it. Tell me a little bit about the makeup of those 9 kids. Like what's the age spread? How did all that go?
Yeah, so Brian's the oldest. He's about 41 now. We'll go down to about 22. I think the interesting backstory is we had 4 children and a dog way back when. And my wife, Sandy, came to me and said, I think we're being called to adopt. I said, I'm not hearing that calling. We're really busy. Our life is full. We have 4 kids. I was in the, the sort of the early midterm of my career as a lawyer, working very hard. And I said, you're crazy. And about 8 years after that, or 8 years after our number 4 was born, we had a surprise. Our number 5 was born, number 5. And then shortly after that, Sandy came to me and she said, I think we're being called to adopt again. I said, well, I think it's crazy because I already told you at 4, like we're filled up. We, by happenstance, God's work, we ended up at a Stephen Curtis Chapman concert. Now, we did not know this artist. We did not know much about the Christian music genre outside of church. Thought it sounded kind of a little weird, but went to this concert that changed the whole trajectory of our lives. At that night, and I've written about this in one of my books, I heard the call, and 18 months later, we were in Beijing, China, adopting our Kevin. So Kevin is our youngest child, but he was adopted at 18 months. We then went back several years later and adopted our Emma. She was 6.5 years old. And then several years, and by then I'm not resisting. Sandy said, we're being called to a daughter. I'm like, we're in. And then there was a group in China, a group of Americans who were advocating for Chinese teenagers. When you become 14, at that time in China, you become ineligible to be adopted. And so there was these kiddos in foster homes and orphanages. In fact, Adam, really hard orphanages. And God sent us a boy and a girl. They were not blood related. They are now brothers and sisters. That's our David and our Leah. They were 12 and 11 at the time. And so that's how you get to 9 with, yes, people say, same wife? Yes, same wife. That's how we get to 9. And now we've been blessed with 9 grandchildren. 2 of them, as we're recording this, born within the last month.
Awesome.
To 2 of my kiddos.
What an absolute blessing. I would imagine the grandkid side of the house. I know that, like, when I look at my dad as a grandpa, it's so much different than seeing him as a dad. And I would imagine that's an unbelievably enjoyable experience for you.
What's really cool, because I grew up playing sports, my kids all grew up playing sports. Now you just show up with your chair, your granddad chair and your grandma chair. You don't have to set up the nets, line the fields, drag the bats, bring the balls, blow them up, any of that stuff. Adam, you just show up for the game. And you watch, now this is interesting, you watch these 30-something young parents learning to navigate travel soccer, football, baseball, these sort of things. I've been a soccer referee for 51 years as well, so I have that perspective. And it is just so fun because you go to the game, Adam, you're watching the game, that's interesting. You're watching your grandchild, that's interesting. And now I'm watching these parents and they're trying to figure out, values and what's their role, what's the coach's role, do we keep spending all this money on travel sports? And so it's a really fun, fun time of life. I turned 67 in February to give your listeners some sense of where I am along the lifespan here.
Hey, everybody, wanted to step in to discuss something. If you're anything like me, you've ran into some time in your business where you feel a little overwhelmed with some of the mundane tasks that eat up your valuable time. You're working more in the business than you are on the business, right? If that's you and you're hearing this and you're saying, boy, it is time to reclaim some of my schedule back, to focus on what truly matters. You want to get time back with elite remote talent with 0 time zone hassle. Check out one of my partners that I just recently partnered up with, WiseVAs.com/Adam is where you go to check these folks out. Delegate $10 an hour tasks to focus more on the $1,000 an hour tasks, the things that are really transforming your business. Get rid of some of those transactional things and do some more of the transformational inside of your business. So again, schedule your free strategy call at WiseVAs.com/Adam. Wise, WiseVAs.com/Adam. Again, let's get rid of some of those transactional tasks and move them into transformational tasks. It's been a phenomenal team to work with. I really look forward to sharing them with you. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. I'll be happy to discuss with you what's going on as well. But again, WiseVAs.com/Adam. Thank you very much. And now back to the episode. Yeah, I know that my parents, it was very difficult for them to come out to any sports events because they were both trying to work and make ends meet and do all this stuff. So if I was at an event, it was without them. And now having my dad be able to even caddy for my son golfing sometimes, it's a lot of fun to just kind of see how different it is and the experience that he gets to have. So
yes.
I want to rewind a little bit before we go too deep down that rabbit hole and kind of understand what your upbringing was like. And I think that you're in a unique position, which I mentioned before we recorded, that you get to, I get to ask you about your father, like I do with almost every guest that I have, and kind of understand like the background, what experiences you had with your dad, how you saw him raising, and then what that changed for you, and now what you see has been passed down to your son. So I'd love to kind of hear a little bit about you growing up and what that looked like.
It's even deeper than that because we can talk about raising the biological kids and then everything we had to relearn about parenting to raise the adoptive kids. So make that note too.
Yep.
I'm very blessed. So obviously born in 1958. So my childhood was the 60s. And I grew up right near where I am today in Annandale, Virginia, in kind of an all-American neighborhood where literally, people don't believe this, but there's like 30 kids, it seemed like, in our block and in the, one block to the west and one block to the east. And it was that time where we just played and it was a great neighborhood. And we were neither rich nor poor. My dad was an electrical engineer. He helped build and design satellites and things like this back in the day. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, the school cafeteria and the school playground mom. And it was a really cool neighborhood because it produced, I grew up and went to college on a scholarship playing soccer. My two neighbors, one of my neighbors was Scott Norwood, who had a long career in the NFL as a kicker for the Buffalo Bills. His brother played it in minor league baseball. Their dad had coached in minor league baseball and was the favorite high school long tenured coach. So we had all of these opportunities Adam, to just play. And it was a time of in America, and I know like I sound old, but a time in America where like the other parents kind of watched you out. Your mom always kind of knew what you had done, even if you didn't tell her, because someone else would tell her. In the summer times, we'd run around until the last kid got called home to their house for dinner or for bedtime. And so my dad he coached, and I was the oldest of 7 kids, so came from a big family. My dad was an only child growing up, but he was very involved in trying to learn soccer and coaching basketball and soccer and helping out, the little league and stuff. And so, mom and dad did get to our games. Now there came a point where we outnumbered them by a lot. But we were allowed to live. We didn't have a ton of rules, but my brothers and sisters, we weren't hellraisers. We didn't get in trouble. We just had these opportunities. And so it was truly a house of law. I'm very blessed. I read about this. I have a book called Play Left Fullback, where I write about this whole history. And I acknowledge that we were just very fortunate. Again, mom and dad lived into old age, long time marriage. So I had all of those things in your life that will most often lead to a positive outcome for the children.
Yeah, and that's even today. Well, in today's day and age, right? Just having the mother and father at the home is the leading indicator that you're going to have a positive outcome for the kids. But yet, you grew up in a house where there was not only the mom and dad home, but there was interaction. They were at the sporting events with you. Like, did you grow up? You mentioned Stephen Curtis Chapman and the Christian church before. Did you grow up going to church as well?
So my mom was Catholic, so we went to Catholic parochial school. My dad was not religious, and so and like I would say, half the kids in the neighborhood went to this Catholic parochial school. The other half went to the public school. Both of those schools were within walking distance. So back in the day of the police lady that helped you, crossing, like kids, we walked a whole mile, truthfully, a mile to school and a mile back until we were old enough and they let us ride our bikes and stuff. Yeah. And so this is what kids did when we were young, right? And so, we were in church every Sunday. I was an altar boy until about 12th grade or so. Absolutely. Today, I practice in the Lutheran Church. We have a great, thriving, really cool, growing Lutheran church in Burke, Virginia, that we've been a part of for over 30 years.
Awesome. Yeah. Burke was one of those places. Burke and Annandale both were some of those places I was looking at living when we were getting stationed up there back in the day. I love both of those areas. They're nice. We ended up down in Stafford just because we ended up not at the Pentagon like we thought. We ended up somewhere else, but love the areas. So as you were kind of growing up and you were seeing, what was your perspective looking at, dad not going to church, mom was going to church? Like, was there any kind of, I was in the same position. My mom went to church, my dad didn't. My mom grew up Catholic, but raised us in more non-denominational, part of my growing up, I was, more Pentecostal, so very, very different than the Catholic Church. But what was that like for you kind of growing up with those ideas?
Well, it was the only thing we ever knew. So It wasn't that dad was anti. So he came on Christmas Eve and Easter and, probably a couple other times, obviously for all the baptisms, that sort of stuff. But it was when it's the only thing it didn't create any issues. Now looking back, it's interesting because, literally I grew up in a school with mostly white children. I didn't know any Jewish children. I don't think and it wasn't until I went to college, I was actually exposed to a lot of diversity. And I guess in high school, when I went to public high school at Thomas Jefferson High School, if you Google it now, you'll see it's a science and technology school. It was not a science and technology school when I went. You had to be good at everything when I went. And so it was a little bit, I guess, sheltered in that way. There was a little bit, in the Catholic parochial school, there was a little bit of us inside the building and them on the outside. Mm-hmm. When looking back, you're like, okay, that's interesting. But we ended up well-developed. Interestingly, my brothers and sisters, some are religious and some are Catholic. Some are, you know, I don't think anyone else is Lutheran, but all from the same family, same parents, diverse backgrounds, occupations, religious, political beliefs, everything. Here's something cool though, is that we are good friends. So my 6 brothers and sisters still get together. We're pretty much in the same area. We get together periodically for dinners, you know, 3 or 4 times a year. And we have cool discussions, like the discussion you're having with me, like, what do you remember about dad and discipline and things like that? And, you know, who was favored? And we joke about that. But we're blessed. It was a very loving, again, neither rich nor poor household. We didn't want for anything. You know, we didn't have, like, we weren't the first ones on the block with a color TV. Like my neighbor was. That was cool.
Yeah. And of course, you probably all went over there to go, whoa.
We did.
Right?
We watched Batman every Wednesday and Thursday. Batman was on the 1960s Batman. And we went over there to their house to watch it in color.
It was Adam West, is that right?
100%, yeah. The Batmobile, and it was, people can't imagine, like, you know, really, when I talk this way, they're like, oh, this old guy, like, it was really cool.
Yeah.
And our parents and the parents on that street let us do things. So we played, for example, we played multiple different sports, right? We didn't specialize when we were 7. Again, you know, none of the kids in the neighborhood that I know grew up to be a felon. So it was basically a good group of kids. And my brothers and sisters, like, I think it's pretty cool that we're all alive, healthy, and we like each other.
Yeah. Yeah, I look at my upbringing and I kind of think that I feel like I grew up in the 60s and versus in the 80s and 90s, because it was like I was always gone as a latchkey kid. I'm much more, I'm not, technically I don't think I'm Gen X because I'm like on that bubble. Growing up, I always thought I was. Everything around was always Gen X. I was like, oh yeah, this guy. And I was very much a latchkey kid, unlike a lot of the millennial side where it was a lot more helicopter parents. I was gone all the time, playing stickball, playing baseball, lighting fires in the woods, building forts, doing all the stuff. And I'm like, man, I live such a different life than so many of the other people that are, you know, around my age growing up. So I am very glad that I lived that life growing up as opposed to some of the other ones. But all right, so as you start moving on throughout your life, how did you kind of decide that lawyering is what you want to do? You wanted to go be a lawyer and go, you know, go down this practice world, because that's a beating in and of itself, just becoming a lawyer. So.
Yeah, so I was lucky. At 16, you know, I'm watching things like Perry Mason on TV, and I'm reading books, you know, like Helter Skelter, and these kind of what we would call, you know, real crime drama you have on podcasts now. Well, these are books, and that was interesting to me. And I was never, although my dad was an engineer, and some of my brothers sort of got that gene of tinkering with stuff and building stuff. You know, every TV we had in the house, Dad built it out of a kit at some point. I didn't have that, and I didn't have like the math gene, and so I thought I wanted to be a lawyer. But the thing that was running parallel to this was I was very fortunate to get introduced to soccer when I was young, and very, very fortunate to grow up in what was in the 60s and 70s one of the maybe 4 or 5 major hotbeds of soccer in Northern Virginia, which was Annandale, Virginia. And so there was a lot of there was great dads, often immigrant dads, who were volunteer coaches who taught us a lot. And there were great players. And I got to play with great players, where when we were 18, we were the national club champions of the whole United States. All my teammates went to college, except for the ones that went directly to the pros. And so, yeah, and I forgot even what question I was answering, but soccer became the lawyer part, right? So soccer was the predominant thing that took me to William & Mary to play on scholarship with many of my teammates from the club. The lawyer thing was cool, but I went to college to play soccer. I went to a very good college with very smart people where I was an average student to play soccer. And I met my wife there. So all these things start to run in parallel. And went to decided I did want to go to law school. Now, went to law school in 1980, and the tuition for law school this will kill you, was $5,000 a year. I spent $15,000 on my law school degree. And if anyone who's younger, and most of your listeners are probably younger, listening to that, if your lawyer's like, you're like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And so, and the law school I went to was George Mason University, which today is very well known, the Antonin Scalia School of Law, hard to get into. It was not hard to get into when I went. It was at the basement of a converted department store. It had just got its ABA accreditation, like in the months, not summer when I graduated from college, got its full accreditation. I went in there and boom, learned there, obviously, but the connections you make and the people you work for in school, like ignited a fire to do trial lawyer work, which is what I've done for 40 some years in the personal injury space. And again, I was fortunate. I had good mentors. I had people that told me that I was good at this. I was allowed to do a lot of things that today young lawyers often don't have the opportunity to do because they're working in firms where you carry somebody's, I guess you carry their iPad now, not their briefcase. But I was allowed to try cases early on, and I enjoyed it. Even though when I was young, I was the shyest kid, high school, college, and even law school. I was very shy. And here I was, talking to juries and judges and stuff. And here today I get to speak all over the country and speak on stages and stuff like that. So I think there's a lot of lessons, a lot of things that young people could learn, like even if you are shy, not the smartest one in the whole class, not the best athlete, it's like, who do you surround yourself with? This is the key, I think, Adam. So I'm very fortunate. I've had a great life.
So you're obviously not shy anymore. How do you think the shyness came in? Were you always shy growing up, or was it some sort of experience? Yeah, I
was always shy, but I had a teacher in the Catholic parochial school, and they ran a speech contest once, and I wasn't going to do it, right? But she encouraged me and she invited me to do that, and so I did that, and I was still shy after that, but that was like, okay, you can get up in front of people and recite. Mm-hmm. I did a version of John F. Kennedy's inaugural address and memorized it and did it.
Awesome.
So I think the lesson learned from all of that is repetitions matter, and learning to do something new is almost always going to be hard and uncomfortable at first. And there's virtually no shortcut, Adam, right? It's just at bat, swing and a miss, get comfortable failing, get comfortable thinking that other people think that you're stupid, or not the smartest one. And then boom, at 67, you're confident.
It just takes until you're 67. All right, got it. All right, I'll write that down. Yeah.
Repetitions matter. That's the writer
for sure.
down. Like, repetitions matter. Yeah.
Yeah. And I tell my son all the time, I said, you're not going to, nobody is born knowing quadratic equations, right? And nobody is born knowing how to speak in front of, but nobody's born even knowing how to speak. So everything takes a repetition. And if we gave up on learning how to walk the same way we give up on learning new things as adults, everybody would be in wheelchairs. It's nonstop. We all have been to a point where working our butts off have got us to be successful in different ways in our life, and then we can forget all about that when it comes to other arenas of our life. It just takes practice.
Exactly. And now the challenge is, because I love mentoring young people and talking about careers and stuff, but the challenge is getting somebody who's younger to believe that they can be special. They can develop neat skills. They can become, sort of an elite in whatever domain that they want. But you do have to work, and you do have to fail and be uncomfortable and feel like, oh my gosh, I'll never be able to do this. And that can be a short period of time. It can be a long period of time. I don't know. And I hate to be the old guy but I think, to your point, that too many people who are young, they seem to want to skip steps.
Yeah.
Or at least skip the uncomfortableness that's required, I think, for success.
Well, I think we live in such a comfort-driven world now anyways that everybody wants to be comfortable doing things and not realizing that it's the discomfort that helps you get somewhere. Like people are fine having that discomfort. Well, not everybody, but people understand that it's uncomfortable to lift weights and then the muscles hurt, but that's how they grow. But yet they don't want that discomfort anywhere else in their life. Like that's it. Like they just want to be comfortable and moving forward. So you mentioned like the difficult part is getting a younger person to believe that they can be the thing that they want, right? How, you raised 9 kids. How would you say that you were able to get your children to believe that they could be the people that they wanted to be or to be successful in the things they want to be successful at?
So there's a couple things. It'd be interesting to go back and listen to Brian's interview because I think in some respects, like mom and dad's memories of kids around the dinner table are different from his. Mm-hmm. Maybe he's more accurate. I think, first of all, it is being able to have the conversation with your children that not that you are special and nothing bad will happen, but that you were born with a unique gift of talents and gifts and interest. We believe God-given. And what he wants you to do and what I want you to do is to try to identify those and let's work on those. Let's become the best we can be with whatever gifts we have. Again, I said like math and tinkering, not my thing. Home Depot gives me hives. Like I don't do that stuff, right? I'll pay an expert who's really good at building or whatever to come do that thing. So that's number one, is like this conversation that has to take place where mom and dad are like, yes, you can. Here's a resource. Here's a guy I know. Here's a gal I know. Here's a story. Here's a book, right? And that's probably the best you can do. And the other thing is, this is important too, because when the kids hear mom and dad talking in the kitchen late at night, like what is that communication? Are mom and dad saying one thing to the children, but saying a different thing to each other, philosophically? Because here's what we learn is that you can lecture your kids all day long, but they are watching you. Mm-hmm. They're watching how you treat the server, the person who cleans your hotel room, the person who is cutting you off who you don't even know, the anonymous person on the highway. And they learn so much about how to treat other people in the world through watching you, not by you lecturing to them. And so, look, we're all human and we all have tolerance, right, for nonsense. But I'll tell you what, my young kids, so my 20-somethings, will hand a server a $20 tip on a $15 purchase. Mm-hmm. Because we taught them, take the cash. Once it's into 20s and it's in your wallet or your purse, it belongs to someone else. We're just trying to find the person that it belongs to. And it's not going to make a bit of negative difference to your life.
Yeah.
However, it may make a big difference to that person who's working a minimum wage or sub-minimum wage job, who's working hard, they're on their feet all day, and you're giving them a $20 cash tip on a $15 coffee, or whatever coffee costs these days.
Yeah.
And so that's neat to watch. That's really neat to watch and see.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that I tell people all the time that more is caught than taught, and you kind of implied that right there. Like the kids are going to see it, they're going to understand it, and right to the tip game. Like my kids and I, it's been a little while since we've done it, and but we'll play the pick a number between it's usually like 5 and 10 or something like that for the waitress, and I'm like, hey, I need to settle an argument for me and my son. Like I pick a number between 5 and 10, and then whatever number they pick, I put a 0 at the end of it, and that's their tip for the dinner.
That's great.
And it's usually it's got to be somebody who's gone above and beyond. They were really fun. We had a good conversation with them. You could just tell that they're the kind of person that deserves to receive the extra tip. But my son loves to do it now. He's like, hey, can we do the tip game? Can we do the tip game? And it's like, man, I really hope that that's something they take on with their kids as well. And kind of show their kids one day, like, hey, who knows, by then it may be pick a number between 50 and 100 to add a 0 to it by the time inflation kicks in. But it's so much fun to watch.
And here's the plus on that strategy is be the one while you're having dinner. And here's the game to play. How much can I learn about that server?
Yeah.
Just ask, because no one else is asking them anything about their life. Hey, how long you worked here? Great. Are you around here? The question is, are you a student? Yeah, I go to this school or that school. Cool. What are you studying? Cool. Yeah, you got any internship? You start talking. These people's faces light up.
Yeah.
Because no one else is doing this. No one is being curious. And so, the joke here is like, I can find out a ton. Uber driver, like, I can know their whole back history and the name of all their children. And that's a fun little, but it's uncomfortable if you haven't done it before. Is this person going to think I'm weird for asking these questions? Why do you do that, Dad? I do it because I enjoy it. And the more reps you get, the more comfortable you get doing it. It's fun.
For sure. When I was going through, I used to be a federal agent back in the day, and going through training down at FLETC in southern Georgia, and you had these parts where they had to do, we colloquially called them howdies, where you had to go up and do that to somebody, some random person, and you had to go get information from them. Sometimes it was what bank they banked at, and sometimes it was, sometimes easy as a phone number or whatnot, but you get so much more comfortable just talking with people when you force yourself to do it. And again, it goes back to the repetition. Like, how can we get ourselves in an uncomfortable situation? And I try to do the same thing with my kids. It's like, okay, well, you need to go order this food, or you need to go ask that person for this, or you need to go do these things, because, my oldest is much more of the reserved, kind of look around, be aware of what's happening, not really wanting to go talk to folks. And, but now he's getting a lot more confident in just being able to, hey, let me go ask that person a question. And it takes that repetition. You have to do it over and over again.
And so many kids don't want to talk on the phone. So our young 20-something is like, no, you call the doctor's office and make your appointment, right? You do this. And some of mine, like, it's really easy, and others like, oh man, this makes me nervous.
Yeah. I would imagine with a 20-year gap, those are like two different generations, literally, your oldest and your youngest. Like, what do you kind of see the difference between those two and how they interact with people? And, what I'm trying to ask is almost the upbringing versus the environment that they grew up in, right? Because they had a similar upbringing, obviously going to be a little bit different, but the same parents, but a similar upbringing versus a very different environment that they grew up in. So what do you kind of see between the two of those?
It's interesting because, I mentioned earlier having to relearn everything we thought we knew about parenting. And so the environment made a big difference, because our adopted kids, two lived in orphanages their whole lives, two lived in foster families part of their lives. And the kids that lived in foster families developed more typically. Mm-hmm. And the kids that lived in orphanages had challenges. And so that was so, for us, black and white. I'll get to your question and try to answer your question. But we literally went from 5 biological children. We never had to go to school. We didn't know about IEPs. The principal only saw us on PTA night, whatever, to raising kids whose brains had been rewired because nobody loved them, right? Nobody loved them. And so Sandy and I we traveled around the country a bit as we struggled with this, to be in rooms full of people like us, who were like, what in the world is going on? Like, what is this brain science and neuroscience and early childhood, adversity? We had to learn all this stuff. And so for us, for Sandy and I, Adam, like, that was the starkest difference. And so the paradigm with which we raised the first 5 is completely different from the second 4, because we had to deal with an on-fire brain that had been rewired. And, we can kind of go deep into the science, and I understand a lot of it, not all of it. And so part of what happened, and we still experience this a little bit, is that the first generation, the older generation, is like, wow, you're treating these guys a lot differently. Well, yes, we have learned a bunch overall just being parents. To your point, it is a different world out there. Mm-hmm. But also, we're dealing with brains that have been rewired by early childhood trauma, right? And until you go and study that, it's like, wow. And so Sandy and I had to work very, very hard to educate ourselves, to enlarge our tolerance level, to not have to worry about what other people thought about how our kid was maybe acting out or some, in some way. One of my daughters went to 7 different schools from elementary school to the time she graduated from high school. 7 different schools.
Jeez.
Then found dog grooming. Makes more money, Adam, than everyone except my lawyer now. Has a stock portfolio, she's 26, to kill for.
Nice.
Because adults in her life cared enough to say, here's something you might be interested in. Let me support you there. And she just got really, really good at grooming and marketing, before and after pictures of the dogs. And she's one of the most popular dog groomers in Northern Virginia. So that's a story for anyone whose child is struggling, right? There is I think this is a really long answer to your question, but the other thing that's changed is we as a society, I think, have said, well, this grade school to high school to college to graduate school path, that's pretty cool, but that's not for everybody, right? And we are now as a society, I think, more tolerant and accepting of, I think many of us are anyway, of, there's an alternate path. Because guess what? The kiddo that goes to some technical school, that job's not going to be taken away by AI, and it's hard for someone in another country who's in the other country, like a virtual worker can't come in and do your dog grooming for you, right? You have to be live and in person to do that. And so I think, for Sandy and I being much more flexible in terms of, we're always hands off. We didn't tell you where to go to college. We didn't tell you what to study. We would support you. If you want to go to Virginia school, we're going to pay for it. That was our deal. It has been our deal. You want to go to graduate school, you'll pay for that. Yeah. So it's a really long answer, but I think we learned so much from the kiddos who were adopted from China because we had to survive as a family, because it was hard. It was very hard. My daughter will look back and go, yeah, I was hard for you. Yes, you were hard. You were hard. And one of my sons is on the autism spectrum, and he's very high functioning. But I'm convinced because of the environment that he grew up in. It's just interesting. I wouldn't change a bit of it, but it was hard.
Yeah, I bet. Do you ever kind of reanalyze? I'm an analyzer. I break everything down as much as I can in my brain. But I'm curious to your thoughts. As you kind of broke down and looked at the early childhood trauma and started realizing, okay, I need to treat kids a little bit differently. Have you ever looked back and looked at your 5 kids and thought to yourself, boy, did I treat my kids separately the way they need to be treated, or was that something you were already doing? Because one kid's going to need a little bit more firm of a hand than another kid, and then but you can't raise all of your kids the same. How did you kind of analyze even the older 5 how each child needed to be raised versus the other?
Yeah. So first of all, today it's what it is. So when we think about something in the past or something in the future, those are just neurons running around in our minds. Yeah. Those aren't real. So yes, we certainly look back and go, with that first one, Brian, who you interviewed, geez, we were amateurs. We didn't have any experience. We didn't have any knowledge. We just did it. The parenting is the one thing you don't need a license for. You don't need a certification. You just do it. Look back some time and go, you know what? Knowing what we know today about the brain, there's probably some things that we would have done differently. Now, did it matter in the long run? No, because my kiddos, all 9 of them are in their space, productive, doing cool stuff in the world, right? So I think, Adam, it's more okay, this is interesting to think about, but neither Sandy or I live in the world of regret. You can't change the past, but you can use it. If they come to us to ask advice about raising their kids, we'll give it. We try not to give advice if it's not asked for. We try not to make judgments, right? Because we have a ton of experience, and they are amateurs. Yeah. At least for the first ones.
Yeah.
We would have done probably some things differently, but I don't think in the end, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
We did the best we could, actually.
I'll sit here and I tell my oldest, I've told him for a long time, hey, I've never raised an X-year-old, however old he was at the time, right? So that's daddy's learning how to raise a 3-year-old. You're learning how to be a 3-year-old. We're going to do this together. I've never done it, right? And then even when the second kiddo came around, it was like, well, I've never had to raise a 1-year-old that has a 5-year-old brother, because now there's such influence there, right? So I am like, you said that you're not going to give the advice unless asked, so I'm going to ask, right? I've got 3 kids, 10, 6, and 2, and I try to figure out, okay, this kid's a little bit more emotionally attached to things than this one, and this thing. How would you recommend somebody like me kind of make sure that I'm doing the right things and not just blanket, parenting my kids all the same way?
Yeah, it's a great question. So what we have to do is a child may have a sort of an outlier reaction to something, whatever. It could be food, sensory, winning or losing at sports, whatever. We have to acknowledge to the child that we understand that what they are feeling is real. So great language to use is someone says, oh, well, my girlfriend broke up with me, or my friend wouldn't share his toy. Like, that must be really hard for you. Like, tell me more about that, because children need to have a voice. Now, you don't have to agree necessarily with everything they say, but giving children the power to have a voice and to express, and giving them repetitions, Adam, at expressing emotions and trying to put words to emotions, we have found to be very, very important, particularly with the kids who were, had early childhood trauma. And so that's the thing we would do to, like, oh, well, adults, like, oh, that's not a big deal, Sally. This is not a big deal. Well, no, actually, they're crying. They're upset. It is a big deal to them now. Doesn't mean it's right or wrong, but it is a big deal. And so acknowledging that makes a connection. So what we learned was something called connected parenting. So you can Google connected parenting. Karen Purvis, she's passed away, but she's one of the leaders at Texas Christian University, TCU, on teaching us, and was one of our mentors for learning. It's like, I can't help you form to be a better human being until you and I have a connection, right? And if that child is born of you, adopted, whatever, like, our job as parents is to have a connection and to be the adults in the room and foster that connection. Now, that means that sometimes other people are going to look at you and going, you're giving that child who's making a scene in a store way too much leash. You need to have some discipline. And we're like, no, actually, like, no discipline, connection first. And it takes someone told us, Adam, when we adopted our kids, and again, we're like, this couldn't be real. But they're like, it takes a year for every year that they were in an orphanage, so 11 years. Wow. It takes a year of focused, you're giving everything, connections created, loving, parenting, to help reset that brain, which has been on flight and fear mode since almost the time they were born. The science, like, wore out your adrenal system, your sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems all screwed up. It takes a year for every year. And we're like, no, we just bring them over. We'll love them. We'll give them a great house in Northern Virginia, everything, great education. That'll fix them, right? And that's we learned that's wrong, because it's not scientific. So that's a long answer, but I think for you and for others who are listening is acknowledging whatever they're expressing is real, and the fact that they're expressing it is what you want them to do. You want them to be able to come to you and say, this makes me scared, this makes me sad, this is why I'm so, maybe jittery, or I can't think straight, right? Just get them to talk and tell them that you understand that it's real. Then we hired a whole bunch of coaches and counselors, and not every counselor was the right counselor or therapist for the right kiddo. So it took a lot of energy, money, time, effort. And the last thing I'll say on this is it took 2 of us working very hard to be on the same page. So when one of us was exhausted, the other could take over. When one of us was like not going by the science and getting a little frustrated ourselves, and I'm pointing at myself, right? The other can say, I will take over. Yeah. So it would be very challenging as a single parent to raise kiddos who are very challenging. It takes two parents who are really ready, willing, and able to work very hard for this. Yeah.
It's almost like God designed the man and the woman to have kids and raise them together. I mean, it's crazy. That's crazy. I know in today's day and age, that's shocking, but yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard with biological, typically developing children, as we all know. But there's science behind what we do. Yeah,
for sure. No, I appreciate that. So I want to go into, you started your law career around the time you got married, right? I think you said at the beginning, 43 years for each of those, right? Yeah. So 43 years, and your oldest is 41 years old. So you're doing your law career. When did you actually start, like, BenGlassLaw, like your own personal? Was that from the beginning, or was that not until later?
Celebrating 30 years of that now. So I worked for 12 or so years to another firm, had the bright idea that I was a good lawyer and I was getting good results. So how hard could it be to start a business? I mean, come on, that's got to be easy, right? And of course, in law school, they don't teach you anything about running a business. In the profession, they don't teach you anything about running a business. Yeah. And back in the day, like, there weren't a lot of books or coaches. Today, there are many books and many coaches and programs to help lawyers understand that if you are a good businessman or woman, right, and can understand numbers and culture and hiring and firing and systems and all that stuff, that actually really helps, because then you can do what you were born to do, like think strategically about a client's case or their opportunity. And, when the lights are on, it works a lot better, right? And you're not stressed out about money. So 30 years for BenGlassLaw. We started, me and one assistant. We worked 4.5 days a week, not because we were on a 4.5 day work week, because we didn't have enough work, right? Yeah. And struggled because I didn't know much about business at all. Didn't know about marketing. Found a guy named Dan Kennedy, got involved with Dan, who's a marketing guru. He's actually going to be speaking at our conference later this year, and changed my whole life. Like how can I show up in a world of, okay, now this is the Yellow Pages and TV. Like, those are your two options when I was 30 years ago. Yellow Pages, TV, radio, maybe. The internet was just being born, and websites for lawyers was just being born. How do we show up differently? And so, got better at that. Certainly the last 5 years, when Brian joined us, he brought a skill with details and numbers that I don't have. He brought a type of case and a way of managing those cases that I did not have that experience. And so we've really been able to grow the firm extraordinarily in the last 5 years. We invest heavily in both personal coaches for ourselves, mindset coaches, corporate coaches. We do EOS. We invest heavily. Like, we don't go to as many of the how do you be a lawyer seminars as we do the how do you market, build a business seminars.
Awesome. So as you were kind of growing it up in the beginning, though, like Brian, your oldest, was around 10 years old when you started this whole thing, 9 years old. So what do you think he experienced, and what sort of life did he get to see a change in between, like, oh, Dad was working for somebody else, now he's working for himself? Like, what was that like for him growing up, or really all of your kids?
He saw a lot of stress. I'm convinced that he saw a lot of stress. We never went to zero, but there were times where it was, financially, like and my practice area is you only get paid if you win, right? So we're not billing hours. If you win a case or settle a case, you get paid, you charge your client a third of the recovery. That's the business model, and 99.99% of our money today is earned that way. And so he not only had that stress, business-wise, growing, trying to figure this out. But then when we started the adoption journey, for sure, there was what we call secondary trauma, right? Because the kiddos who were coming into our house required so much energy. And again, I just want to emphasize, like, they're all doing very well, productive, like, kind of figured it out now. And so Brian, and as the oldest, now look what his handicaps are. He's got amateurs for parents who have the brilliant idea to start a business without any business skills, right? And then as he is edging out of the house, heading off to college, we're starting to bring others into the house that are, requiring energy. So,
Yeah.
the fact that he turned out as good a guy as he is kind of a miracle, actually.
And he not only went through all that, but he decided to go down the same path that you did as far as becoming a lawyer. What kind of conversations did you have with him around that, and how did that decision kind of get made?
So I don't think we had deep conversation. Again, my kids went to, we eventually sent 7 kids to 6 different Virginia universities. So I have $40,000 T-shirts from every 6 different universities in Virginia, right? And I think one thing was clear is that when he got out of law school, so he graduated from law school as the Great Recession was starting. Mm-hmm. And all the promises of you go to law school, you're going to get a job at a big firm, make a lot of money, went out the window.
Yeah.
So he, and one thing we wanted to make sure was that he saw other things besides what Dad was doing. So he worked for one firm, and he probably told you it probably lasted 4 months because it was run by somebody who was not very ethically stable, I think. But then joined another firm, a friend of mine. So he did similar work, plaintiffs, car crash cases, in a largely eat what you kill environment, and made good money, right? So then he went to a first year law school at Michigan State and said, man, it's awfully cold up here.
It is a little chilly, yes.
And a little chilly. And so he did really well and really excelled there and transferred to William Mary's Law School. And so graduated from William Mary's Law School. Now, the interesting story is a lot of his friends did get big law jobs, and then they went away in the next 12 to 18 months. Mm-hmm. He got a job in a small firm. And so that's been his path. And then when he joined us, he saw what we were working on, things like we were deliberately working on how do we build a company that's enduring? How do we build a company of significance? His other firm was great. They did well. They made money. They did not talk about things like, what are we really building here?
Yeah.
And so he and I, got together and with Mom blessing every deal that we've done with each other. That's his mom, my wife, right?
Yeah.
And that's how we got to where we are. I've got just so people know, I've got my kiddos are a pastor, a firefighter, a school teacher, a couple of kids that work in jobs they can't tell me what they do for the government, dog groomer, dog assistant groomer. So, every kid found their space in the world.
Love it
so far, and it may change. Yeah.
Yeah, and my space has changed probably 5 times since I've been an adult. So that's I keep finding the niche that I was like, oh, I was actually growing to do that now. Yes. I didn't realize that was getting me to a spot to be able to do this, and all those things. So. When it came to the business side of the house, right? So, I mean, you're growing your business and you're raising your kids and you're trying to figure this all out. Did you have conversations about what it was like running your own business with your kids? Like, as you were trying to figure it all out, were there bring your kid to school day or bring your kid to work day type of stuff, where they got to kind of look behind the curtain a little bit at what you had going on?
I think it was more like they heard the conversation in the dining room, right? Okay. Because it was. So a lot of those years were hard, and it was kind of feast or famine. You'd settle a big case or you'd win a big case and you'd have a bunch of money, and then you'd figure out. What I didn't know was how to hire people. And so in a small firm, you hire them, you get to know them, but then the cash flow runs out and you got to fire them. That was really hard. So I think he and I have had more conversations, after he joined the firm, and we're building something which is pretty cool, and that we're not building the traditional thing that lawyers would say they're building. We could talk about that in a second. I think that, it was a generalized stress level. Again, neither rich nor poor, wanting nothing, living in Northern Virginia, relatively affluent section of Northern Virginia, great public schools, got to go to college, found his way through law school. So, not much to complain of there. I coached a bunch of his teams, and of course, all of our kids also at one point or another played sports or did music and stuff. So I think he learned through listening, like you said earlier.
Yeah. So you decided to build a business 30 years ago, and then now you're kind of building more, and you're kind of, so when did you start the the consulting side of the house and kind of the additional stuff you're doing now.
Yeah, so Great Legal Marketing is that company. It started 20 years ago. So
Okay.
So what Dan Kennedy is famous for marketing, but he's also famous for talking to guys and gals like me who get good at something, get good at their own business and say, look, it'd be really cool if the other people in the profession or the industry like knew some of the things that we know. And so I started Great Legal Marketing. It was originally started as teaching personal injury lawyers how to advertise. Again, we're talking Yellow Pages and TV stuff. Today, it's an organization which says, hey, these 800-pound gorillas out there, that's not us. There's these law firms that are spending tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars a month on advertising. That's not us. That's not most of America. Most of America, law is built of mom and pa running small firms, grassroots marketing, building things that matter, competing against the big TV gorillas. And not that that's bad at all. That's what they have chosen and it works for them. And so so we simply took what I was starting to do in the law firm and just started taking it to the market. And I was one of the first players there. Like really, there was maybe one other guy who was coaching lawyers about business. Today, there are many. And there's one born every 32 and a half seconds, I think, right? Whether or not they have actually practiced law or run a law firm, it doesn't seem to matter. Like they're a coach now. And it's fine. It's good. Because what we would say to somebody like you is, if you were a lawyer, Adam, it's like, you should be in a room. Our room might be great for you. Here's who our room is for. Mom, pa, probably 20 employees or less, $5 million or less top line revenue. Like that's us. Like we can help you. You get above that, here's the other room you ought to go in, right? That room over there is for 5 to 10, 10 to 50, 50 to 100. Other cool rooms. And so this is our space, and Brian and I are really good at this. And what we're really good at is, Adam, if you can tell me, like, what kind of life do you want? Like, what is your lifestyle sort of law firm? Where are you today? What are you doing? What we're good at is helping you figure out what's the best use of my next dollar or my next hour in building my business. It might be buying some marketing scheme, but probably not. It's probably about building a foundation, right? Where you cultivate human relationships with people who will remember your name. They may not remember exactly what you do for the law, Adam, but they'll know that you're trusted, you're a cool guy, you sound like you probably could help. And so they call you. Some of those people will be people you take on as a client. Others are like, nope, got to go to my Rolodex, and you should go talk to Susie over here. That's what we're really good at. And that's the type of lawyer that we attract to Great Legal Marketing. So we run seminars, conferences. We've got multi-level membership group, mastermind groups, that sort of stuff. And we're one of the rooms that people can get in now.
So it's funny because, you said almost the exact same phrase earlier in the podcast that Brian Beckham had said on there, like building his practice around the lifestyle that he wanted. Was he one of your clients? Was that how he kind of got to the point where he was?
Yeah,
okay.
Brian was an early member and was in my mastermind group for a number of years, and we remain very good friends. And he's built something like fabulous. He and Vu, his partner down there, fabulous.
He's got a phenomenal practice with, from what I understand of it and the research I did of it and everything. He seems to be doing very, very well, and he's very involved with his kids and with his family and jujitsu and all the stuff. So you obviously have done a phenomenal job getting him in that spot to be prepared to live the life that he actually wanted instead of being forced to live the life that he had to because of the business. So
we were a factor. Like it's the guy or gal you see in the mirror that makes the most difference in your life.
Of course. Well, he gives a lot of credit to you. I'll say, if you go back and listen to that podcast, he gave a lot of credit to you on that for sure, as being a great mentor for him and building that out. So, enjoy your flowers because he's giving them to you. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. So I would imagine that, it took you, it was 10 years between the time you started your own practice, the time you started doing that. Was it the pain and heartache that you went through at the beginning of your own practice that led you to go, you know what, I know those people are going through the same thing I did that made you want to start a second then?
100%. Okay. So the teacher was staying a little bit ahead of the class and we were learning. So one of the fundamental principles I learned was I had to be in rooms outside of law. So if you were running a coffee shop and it was a successful coffee shop and I was in a group, mastermind group or something with you, a social group, I got them like, what are you doing to get clients, customers? How do you get them to come back? And so then looking for these good ideas outside of law and saying, how could I bring that into legal? How could I use what this other successful person or business is using and bring it into legal? And so, yes, and we knew their pain. And Adam, the pain isn't any different today. It really isn't. The pain today is, oh my gosh, there are so many choices.
Yeah.
So many different ways to burn money. And it is burning money if you don't have a foundation. Like lawyers will pay a lot of money for leads, but they don't have a trained person and a salesperson answering the phone. Like, it's crazy, but that's most of America. So we recognize that and we help fix things like that.
It's funny because like marketing before, if you wanted to do like the cheapest marketing you could, it was like you were AAA something, so you were the first one in the yellow pages, right? And now it's like it's something completely different, and it's all changing different things and how you react and how do you set yourself apart. And I literally had a call today to try to figure out my YouTube channel. Like, how do I set myself apart on YouTube? Because there's so many long form podcasts out there. Everybody that I talk to loves what I do. Like, everybody that listens to podcasts are like, this is great. I'm like, great. But if nobody's listening to it, it doesn't really matter. So we got to figure out, the best marketing strategies, the best way to do this. And every single day it's going to be changing. So I would imagine,
you're learning new stuff. You're learning new stuff and stuff that's hard for you when you first, someone may tell you to go do something. You're like, I'm not totally comfortable with that yet, right? And then you have to think, well, which guru do I listen to, right? Which course do I buy?
So now, it's been 5 years since you've had your oldest coming in. Is there anybody else that's a part of the business at all as far as your kids go, or is it just your oldest?
No, just, they've all probably worked here part-time at some point. But no, part of the, pause. Mom has been the bookkeeper from day one.
Okay.
So my wife, Sandy, is bookkeeper from day one, still today. When I retire, she retires, and they'll have to replace two people.
There you go. Yeah. So what has it been like kind of working with your son? And especially I want to know kind of like as you're watching him build inside of your business while also, be a dad to grandkids. So now you get to see the dynamic of, okay, well, here he is at work, there he is at home. Like, what has it been like for you? Like what type of things were rewarding? What type of things are like, oh man, I wish we weren't doing whatever. Like, what is it, what's it been like for you for the last 5 years?
So there's very little of the, I wish we weren't doing that because the coaching that we have. So remember, we talked about getting personal coaches and corporate coaches. So both of these coaches, and we have the same mindset coach, a guy named Sammy Chong up in Toronto. But the EOS, the Entrepreneur Operating System model is open and honest discussion, right? We're going to solve issues. We're going to battle about issues in the meetings. We're going to walk out aligned, all right? And in our office, a tie goes to Brian because he's the integrator and I'm the visionary. So these are the rules of engagement. So do we agree on everything? No. Do we often have disagreements? Of course. This is again, every day, Adam, we're playing in a space we've never played in before as we continue to grow, right? And it's uncomfortable, just like we've talked about through this whole podcast. Are we, when we walk out of the room, though, are we aligned, even if my side of the argument didn't win or his side of the argument didn't win? Yes. And this is what is critical, is that we don't have the whispering in the halls of our leadership team after the quarterly meeting, the weekly meeting, the annual 2-day offsite retreat. Like, no, this is what we said we were going to do this quarter, right? And this is what you said you'd be accountable for. And so we hold each other accountable. So it's been good there. But I think that this external coaching has helped a lot because we can have hard conversations and walk away from them like still business partners and father-son buddies. And so that's been great. I think that if this was unstructured, if we had not found good coaches through EOS, it would just have been a lot harder because it was chaos. Like when he came, it was pretty, I didn't have this, right? Didn't have coaching of the corporate, because I was the only decision maker.
Yeah.
And it was chaotic. And so the more you can just have systems for how you think about the business and then systems for running the business, now you can free up more time to do what we were born to do, which is just to think strategically about our clients' cases and think strategically about the business. And it is a cool trip to be on. And then, Adam, you get to, and watching your kids learn how to raise kids,
Yeah.
that's phenomenal. We've already talked about the sports part, but it's really neat. So last night we all went to a state quarterfinals high school soccer game here in Virginia, and I sat with Brian's 3 boys and Brian, and it was so much fun because they asked good questions. There was a huge crowd at the game. It was just really fun. And, watching your children learn to parent and to parent successfully, it's really cool. Like, it's new space.
What have you, like, as you're kind of leading the business side of the house, do you ever find yourself tempted to kind of go, hey, like, I know you got some family things, like, get the heck out of here, where you wouldn't if it was a normal employee, but because it's your son, maybe there's any dynamic there? Or how do you guys kind of work any of the, because I would imagine the emotional side of the house is obviously very different with your son being the partner as opposed to, Johnny, the guy that you've known for the last 10 years type of guy.
Yeah. So let me just drop back. I told you we were building something different. And so if you ask most personal injury lawyers, like, what do why? Like, why do you have this law firm? Well, we fight for justice. We defeat the insurance companies. We get you all the money you deserve. And we said, well, okay, that's interesting, but that's what everybody says. And so we have deliberately built a firm on the theme of we want to build a place where people will thrive. So first of all, Adam, the owners thrive. Like, we, unabashedly make money and have built something that's to our lifestyle. Okay. Mm-hmm. However, if you come to work for me, we want this to be the best place that you have ever worked. Doesn't mean that we can say yes to everything you think you want, but we will try. So that you raise a question, you got family matter, blah, blah, blah. That's a high priority for us, right? In COVID, Brian and I said, well, we don't know what the rules are. We've never experienced a worldwide pandemic before. So we asked our employees, some of whom had childcare issues and stuff like that, like, what would be best for you? We had a lot of physical space, so working in the office was safe here. But if you needed childcare to work at home, we tried to make that happen. Mm-hmm. Now, the bigger you get, the more sort of uniform and structured. And, the other person, the other family member, Brian's wife, Krista, is our HR. And she brings so for a firm of 20 people, it's very unusual in legal to have an HR trained professional. Mm-hmm. Like, most of them are kind of run ad hoc, but we have an HR trained professional. And so as you get bigger, you do have a little bit more structure and keeping track. You got to treat everybody the same. But, I don't think the fact that we are son and dad has affected anything, because we run this like a business, and we've got a coach who is holding us accountable to run by the system that we have adopted, Entrepreneur Operating System. So again, I give long answers to questions. I find that and today we coach. Some of our members are father, dad, father, daughter, daughter, son, kind of relationships. And we teach him exactly what I've just told you. It's like, you have to be able to have open and honest conversation. You cannot be saying one thing here and saying another thing in the hall. You have to be aligned. And a lot of times, Adam, when we find that relationship is challenged and the firm is everyone's not happy, it's because they're not really on the same page. They haven't had the hard discussion. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes the younger has been unwilling to say to the elder, this just isn't going to work. All right. So it has worked for Brian and I. We're on kind of a 3-year plan. I'll be 70 in 3 years. 3-year plan for him to acquire my shares. What day one after that looks like, we're not really sure yet. Probably this is interesting work for me. I'm doing some of the most interesting work in my entire career now. I don't do a ton of legal work. I do like I coach the team. I help establish our sort of market presence and be the authority figure in our niche. So I'm blessed. I think the challenge is, now this is kind of cool too. The challenge is when the founder has built something and the founder goes, well, I worked really hard. I worked 60 and 70 and 80-hour weeks, and now I don't have to do that. And there is something that's real. It's called founder's guilt. And it's when the founder won't accept or fails to realize, like, yes, darn it, like I built this, and it's okay to say, I got to go to referee soccer, or I'm going to go to travel out of town, and I don't put in 80-hour work weeks, and we've never billed hours. But founder's guilt is real. And again, it helps Adam to be in a mastermind group where there's other people that go, you know what, dude, like that is real. We understand what you're talking about, but you built it. And so now you get to accept some of the treasures of having worked really hard at building something that matters.
Love it. I want to go into the grandpa side of the house now for a little bit. Just kind of like, you've got 9 grandkids, 2 of which I think you said have been born within the last month. So that's super exciting. My parents are at how many? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 grandkids. And there's not going to be any more unless I adopt. So, but what has it been like for you kind of watching your kids raise kids? What sort of ideas and thoughts has it made you go? And again, no, I'm not on the regret side of the house, but look back and say, oh, well, I think they picked that up from what we were doing. You know, you and your wife talking, you and Sandy talking, like, oh, I think they do that because of what we did. And I wonder if we did that right. Or I wonder if how this goes. Like, there's, do you ever sit back and analyze kind of watching your kids' parents and how that kind of happened?
We certainly watch, and sometimes we go like, what book are they reading that we didn't have, because they're doing this completely differently. I would say, much like not hovering over the kids and telling them which college they should go to or what profession or occupation they should pursue, we're standing back and watching. When you need us, we will be there. You need babysitting services, we will try to be there. My kids don't need financial resources or much financial advice, because they're all working and productive in the world. Mom probably more than dad, because mom answers the health, medical, what happens when, what is this, the child won't breastfeed, or, is irritable. And so Sandy is a great, great, great resource for soothing the human being who's there. I'm the guy, at least on the sports side, to the extent that my kids are coaching. I'm like, look, I've been involved in literally thousands of soccer games as a player, coach, and referee. It's okay. What happens this weekend doesn't really matter too much in the long run. We are here to be the sane adults in the room, to help the kids have a fun experience in a safe environment. And that goes back to like watching these 30-something parents scream at referees, or try to coach their kids when actually they're paid coaches on the other side of the field. And Brian is a great coach, so I'm very proud of him. Like he is the sane adult in the room. He's out there on the soccer field with his kids. He's influenced now a bunch of young, soccer players and playing travel, kind of low-level travel. They love him. The other parents love him because he gets it. Like he understands that the goal is not winning trophies is fun. It's fun to win trophies and win championships. But it's more fun to develop kiddos who will be great citizens, who can tolerate stress, who can tolerate challenge, who don't give up, who don't shift blame to referees or opponents or teammates. That's the fun part, and that's what he's building in his team. So that's a beauty.
As you were talking about that, I kind of, I almost felt like I got a kick in the shin with this. We talked about earlier, like when our children are going through something, and like to them it is a big deal, right? Like something happened, and it's a big deal, and then even me as a, as my wife and I as 40-something-year-old parents, just kind of looking at our kids, we say something, we do something, we react to something, and we think it's this huge deal. And really, it's probably similar to when our kid thinks something is a big deal. Like later on, it's not going to matter as much. We probably didn't screw something up the way we think we did. We just feel like it because right now it means a lot to us in this moment. But later on, it may not mean as much. So let's give ourselves that grace to not have to scream at the referee because, okay, a bad call happened. It's not going to be a big deal. Okay, let's not be so upset that my son slammed his club on the ground after he hit a really bad shot. I don't need to jump on. Look, it's all right. We could figure this out, and I can make better calls tomorrow and just learn from it and move on. So you sound like you have been like almost like that. This is obviously, we've been talking for what, an hour and 15 minutes. So that's all I know about you. But it sounds like you've kind of had this level head a majority of your life, by the sounds of things, at least in the raising of the kids. Is that something that you've kind of had, or is it just like because of the experience, the life experience, you're 67 now, you're able to look back at it and you're able to speak it as if it was kind of that level head?
I think it's life experience. So I'm sure I was when I was a young redhead teenage soccer player that I was, probably unfair to referees.
I don't think there's a single teenager out there that's not unfair to referees when they're out there.
But now, having done that for 51 years and, wanting to continue to do that as long as I can physically, you just see. I had a lady ask me, we were at a tournament, our kids were playing, and I'm the guy who's always sitting away from the parents. And she said to me in the restaurant at a tournament, like, how can you be so calm? We were playing in some semifinal. How can you be so calm? I said to her, like, I've been involved in thousands of games. Like on Tuesday, none of this, the kids won't remember. Like they're on to the next thing. So it is really cool to win. It is really cool to work hard and to achieve, for sure. But I am one of a number of people now who have this sportsmanship voice. I'm kind of known a little bit for this, that says, man, if we don't fix the culture in youth sports, if we don't reduce the toxicity, like the sports will go away. Again, I grew up in an environment with volunteer coaches. We probably played unstructured play, Adam, as much as we did practice and games.
Yeah.
Let's meet at the park, bring your balls, bring your bats. Again, I sound like an old guy, but this is what we did growing up, right? And I'm trying to help restore that little by little. I write about it a lot. I wrote a book for teenage soccer referees, like how to deal with the adults in the game that are knuckleheads. It's a total mindset book. Like, it's not about the rules. And so I think it's developed by living in the world, by getting good coaching, like getting good individualized coaching and hanging with people who think like this, right? Because who you surround yourself with, like the 5 people you surround yourself with, the 5 people that matter most, it tells you everything. And so that's why, groups like GoBundance, like watching Brian and GoBundance, so it's just how you and Brian know each other. Like that has been amazing. Like just to hear his stories and to be with men who are successful businessmen talk, as I understand it, mainly about how do I be a better dad, a better parent, and a better human being in the world, which is so cool. Now, imagine if we had more discussions like that, and fewer discussions about which political team are you on and, like all the bad things that are happening in the world. Let's figure out how to treat each other with kindness and tolerate and recognize that if this other person is mad or, out of bounds or whatever, there's something, this is what our adopted kids saw us, there's probably something in their background that just causes them. And let's have a little bit of tolerance, ask curious questions. Again, give them the power of the voice. This is giving other people the power of the voice. I don't have to agree with you, but at least try to understand why you are so upset or why you believe A or B, right? This is how we make the world better. And we ding the world one person at a time. And what I'm trying to do, and through podcasts like this, is like to give other people sort of the ammunition and a skill set to get reps, to get at-bats, to feel uncomfortable. Because when you see the other person's reaction, and they're like, oh, this isn't like just a toxic name-calling fight. This is someone who's curious about why I believe what I believe. Yeah. They change, you change, and the world gets a little better. And that sounds like, I don't know, high and mighty maybe, but life's a choice, and I choose to live in that space.
No, I don't think it sounds high and mighty. I think it sounds reasonable, and I wish that more people would kind of lean that direction. You know, like even in one of the most toxic environments is the political environment, and you watch that, and nobody can even have a conversation anymore because, you know, right. All you can do is have name calling and all this stuff, and we've lost the ability to disagree, but disagree agreeably, you know? And
figure out why, like if someone has a politically opposite view of yours, like let them explain it. Ask, I taught my kids, my son David is my oldest Chinese child, went to college, and he's grown up as a very conservative American, and you know most colleges are liberal. George Mason, very liberal, but he just learned to ask curious questions. And if you believe this, then tell me about this. Then tell me about this. Then tell me about this. The other person thinks they've engaged in a fantastic conversation. Yeah, you've learned from each other. It's all okay.
Yeah. For sure. I think asking questions is a lost art that nobody wants to do anymore. Like learning about somebody, you know, and I appreciate being able to do it. So that said, Ben, it was awesome to learn more about you and have you on here. Is there anything that you wish that I would have asked you about, or that, you know, you were like, hey, I really hope we talk about this? What? Oh, you just got something. Something's there.
So, yeah, sure. So when I get invited to speak at my kids' weddings, I'm like, okay, so here's the advice, right? It's okay to go to bed mad. Like it is, because you and your spouse trying to figure out the answer to a problem that you have contention with while you're both exhausted is like, no. But the conversation starter the next day is this. Honey, when you say X, the story I'm telling myself is fill in the blank. I am now taking responsibility for however I feel about this. And it is a great way, it's a great husband-wife icebreaker after an argument. And it is absolutely okay to go to bed mad, because it is just, you need two people that have energy, and every day is a new day, and a good night's sleep, if you can get it, even if you're mad at each other, is a way to restart the next day with that. When you say X, or when you do X, the story I'm telling myself, taking responsibility, is X or Y, right? That's a great conversation starter. So.
Love it. And I think the key there is that the conversation continues after you wake up. It doesn't, you don't bury it. You don't put it away. You don't, we'll wait till it comes up again later. No, you wake up and you have the conversation, right? Like it's because otherwise that conversation gets buried for, potentially years, and then it becomes a real big issue. But no, I love it.
You don't have to win every argument. If you win every argument, it means you married a loser, and nobody married a loser.
Yeah, very true story. And if you win every argument, you really lost the whole thing anyways, right? Because if all you're doing is there to win an argument, you're really losing a marriage. Like that's not. Yeah. You can win five arguments and lose an entire marriage just because of it. So that's not the point. Really appreciate you spending some time here with us, Ben. I greatly appreciate it. If folks are hearing this and they want to reach out to you, maybe it's about your mentor side of the house. Maybe maybe they got an fender bender up there in Northern Virginia, and they're like, hey, I like this Ben guy. What's the best way for folks to reach out to you?
So BenGlassLaw.com is the law firm. GreatLegalMarketing.com is the marketing firm. But if you ever just want to chat, go check out LunchWithBen.com. Lunch with Ben. I love talking to. I've talked to everyone from youngins who are thinking about, do I go to law school or graduate school, to folks that are like, hey, I just sold my practice and I don't know what to do with the rest of my life. So lunchwithben.com tells you what the cost is, which is you make sure the salad shows up, and we'll have a conversation. And I love talking to people. So that's a space.
Very cool. And you have a podcast as well. Is that right?
The Renegade Lawyer Podcast. Yep.
There we go.
You get to interview interesting folks inside and outside of legal who are dinging the world.
Awesome. I absolutely love it. Well, again, thank you very much, Ben. Everybody's listening. Please reach out to Ben if there's anything that he could. I mean, I love the lunchwithben.com. I definitely wrote that down. I may have to go get lunch with Ben one of these days. So, but I thank you very much, Ben, for jumping on. Everybody listening, please like, subscribe, comment. Let us know what your favorite part of the conversation was. Reach out to Ben if there's anything he could do to serve you. Thank you all again. Thank you again, Ben. And we will see everybody on the next show.
Thank you so much for listening to the BizDad Podcast. We hope you found some value in your time here with us, and we look forward to bringing you the next episode. If you've enjoyed today's show, please subscribe and share so you and your friends won't miss our upcoming episodes. Connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Rumble, where we continue these discussions and share more valuable content. Be the dad you know you need to be and run your business in a way you're proud to share with your kids. Keep crushing it.